by mail from the election secretary. Tonight, you will be witnessing a board meeting in person. Once adjourned, the floor will be open to the members for any questions. There's a lot of material to cover, so out of courtesy, we ask all to refrain from any comments or interruptions. If you need to use the restrooms, both doors behind us are closed, so we're asking everyone to walk out of the fire station and use the side door of the community center. Rhonda, I'm calling this meeting to order at 7:01 p.m. Rhonda, have we established a quorum from the mail to begin the annual meeting? We have. Let's begin. Welcome. I see a lot of new faces here tonight. Members of the association, I would like to introduce you to the members of the corporation. Starting with Hope, all the way down at the end. Hope Carmichael is from Jordan Price. She is our lead counsel. Next is Rhonda Miller, our secretary. Les Pendleton, director of branding. Rich Miller, vice president, director of finance. Myself, Phil Hewitt, president. Next to me, John Rothengas, director of strategic planning. Next to him, Craig Myler, director of research. Gail Albertini, director of communication. And Jennifer Goditis, our community director. When starting a presentation, a lot of people open with a joke. I prefer a quote to set the direction. You can't begin to understand where you are unless you understand where you've been. We have a long history. It's over 50 years now. I'm not going to tell you how a developer sells his vision of a community and then tries to pass the cost onto you as their exit strategy. Instead, I'm going to start at a turning point when you determine your own destiny. The year is 2016. Let me paint a picture. Let's start with revenues for that year. You were almost $100,000 short of budget. I looked up the cost of living adjustment for that year. It was 0%. You weren't even keeping up with the rate of inflation that year. Collections. You were short $131,000. In most industries, they rate this as fair. You were at 89%. So the longer it takes you to collect money, the more likelihood it's going to do this. Turn it into bad debt. Bad debt that year was $360,000. 3 times the national standards for what most industries do. This is money that is gone that you're probably more than likely never going to get. EBITDA. So let me give you a little perspective. When I was working, there was a time we had so many companies requesting a merger or an acquisition. Most were in financial trouble and didn't even know it. But we needed a quick system to determine if they were even worth returning a phone call. We added revenue, collections, bad debt, and EBITDA together. The total was used to see what percentage of the budget it consumed. If you were 10% or lower, it got a green flag. We were interested. Between 15 and 20%, it got a yellow flag. It means we thought you had potential, but we were going to wait on it. Anything over 20%, it was a pass at this point because we believed it was on a downward slope. And it just wasn't, we didn't have the bandwidth to look at it. Let's look at what your number was. $700,000 in losses on your EBITDA. Okay? So you either have wins or losses. You wrote a check for that amount that year. Let's look at, if we total all that up, where we were talking about percentage of a budget, $1.2 billion, 50 cents on the dollar was gone even before you began. If we look at the M&A rating like what I was talking, it would have been definitely a red flag. And I also looked at what a bank would have thought. Any bank would have labeled you very high risk, and your numbers would have been a hard pass for both accounts. Then, we go and borrow almost $3 million from private investors. Why? Because no bank was going to give us any money based on the numbers you just saw. To buy 385 acres and its liabilities, which includes, obviously, the property taxes on all the land and all those structures. This is what you got. A clubhouse that needed to be torn down. A concrete swimming pool that must be removed and filled in. 3,000 feet of failing seawalls. 2 marinas dilapidated and needing to be rebuilt. A golf course that was losing money. A bar grill that was not profitable. And the 7th thing was another 18-hole golf course with grass as deep as a pickup truck that now needed to be maintained. And if that wasn't bad enough, on top of that, the financial reporting structure was rolled up into a single balance sheet. No subtabs to break out profit centers to try to manage and understand your costs, true costs. Unless you knew how to read a financial spreadsheet, the average person assumed everything was fine. The real kicker in all this was a golf management contract that stated your businesses were private amenities without any performance goals, objectives, or quantifiable targets. Let's get to the bottom line. You were losing on average $50,000 per month, keeping them private as stated in the contract. All at the monthly price of an additional $30,000 on that loan for the next 10 years just to say, you own it. Don't get me wrong. Please don't get me wrong. Purchasing the 385 was the right move. However, to continue to manage it the same way and expecting different results, well, that's the definition of insanity. This philosophy didn't change until 2022. Then, shift happens. This board decided to run this $4 million incorporated community like a business. The first step is always the financials. We created standalone P&L statements, profit and loss statements for each of our profit centers. This was no easy task from an accounting standpoint. Chip and his group and Shroom, thank you for doing this because that meant every component from the golf course and restaurant were separated. Hundreds of line items that had to be itemized and posted to the appropriate GL code for each enterprise center. Even down to having separate and dedicated phones for each business. By getting granular, we could see trends versus making assumptions without true data. The second step, we needed a new contract. Not a golf management contract, but a community management contract. So don't blame our business partners because they were basically told, don't spend any money. Because quite frankly, we didn't have it. Our new contract has aligned our goals that is self-sufficient. There's clear performance matrix in place for each enterprise center. Incentives to be in the black and a collection program to ensure our financial strength. We're now telling them, let's make money. The third step, you have to invest in your success. We focus on 6 key target areas. We'll discuss each component separately, but let's start with, I'll call it A, rebrand. Rebrand creates an excitement around the movement. From a new logo to signage and having a true marketing budget for our centers. Next thing, refresh your look. Renovate your restaurant and make the name relevant. New golf cart paths. exterior landscape lighting, hydration station, tidy up and secure your golf and restaurant equipment under the car park, an actual sidewalk for the parking lot, new golf carts, and update your website. Next thing, rebuild your team. We hired a new PGA club manager, a new head golf professional, a new food and beverage manager, and a new chef. Next thing, we had to rethink. Show you're flexible and you can adapt to evolving trends. Traditionally, you need a building permit to do anything on your land. What if I just wanted to improve my land to flip it? Well, when preparing any site, there's two things that you must do. There's two steps: land development and then building. They should be done in this order and sometimes are done by other contractors. PCC, Stormwater, the board got together, we collaborated to bifurcate this document. Now it's a two-step process that solved two major problems. First comes the land. This makes sure the development doesn't affect delicate balance of our current stormwater system and becomes an integral part of the solution. By doing this part first, it's not an afterthought. It's not complete at all, especially after the builder has sold the home. And lastly, it's an option for people to prepare their property for future development and a likely sale without having to submit fake building plans. Next thing is you got to respond. Effective August 1st, the speed limit inside the entire community will no longer be 35 miles per hour. The new posted speed will be 30 miles per hour. Speed cameras will go into effect at the same time. You will have 30 days from the mailing to pay the fine. If you opt to seek traffic adjudication, you have the same time frame of 30 days to appeal. After 30 days, your fine will double. After 60 days, the account will go into collections. The violator will be charged for an additional legal fee of $450 plus any late charges. If you rent your home and your tenant is caught on camera, both of you will receive a notification of the violation. The same time frame is placed after 60 days. The homeowner now will be responsible for all unpaid speeding violations, legal, and late fees. If you don't have a barcode on your car, you might want to consider it, since the SOP standard operating procedures for the security will also change as of August 1st. And some entrances may have longer lines. Every vehicle without a barcode will provide the driver's name, destination, and license plate. Property owners and host contractors and guests will be notified of speeding violations. If fines are not paid within 30 days, they will not be allowed to drive in Fairfield Harbour until the fine is paid. Repeat offenders may be barred from future entrances. And lastly, you have to reinforce. We're establishing a Craven County office substation on campus. The main objective is for selected administrative needs and to facilitate appointments with representatives of the department. The carryover of ongoing presence of the sheriff or his designee will increase the level of safety, and their patrolling becomes a visible deterrent for crime, careless, and reckless driving. The fourth step in shift happening. You got to use economy of scales when doing infrastructure projects. Okay? Instead of parsing out this money for every committee, each new budget cycle, those funds are rotated so you can make an impact versus patching everything. Each committee will still get its average yearly run rate for needed repairs and contingencies, but in their designated year, get a bigger bang for the buck when making large improvements. For example, last year was roads and streets. They paved all of San Lucia, Spinnaker, half of Conavan, the entrances to the community, dog park, pickleball, the Truist and ATM parking area, expansion for food trucks, 4 golf cart paths at Harbor Point, and Red Sail went from dirt to asphalt parking. This year will be waterfront. Birdland Marina will be rebuilt using hog slats for the dock and finger piers, plus nearly 500 feet of Navy-style flat panel seawall. Both projects are using new materials and new methods. These commercial applications can be an option to homeowners in the future. The following year could be stonewater. Instead of a macro approach, they were asked for instead of a micro approach, they were asked for a macro approach. How to move and contain more water. They're completing a feasibility study in a soil sampling now for a possible future retention pond and pumping system. Lastly, find new and creative ways to source revenue or reduce liability. We appealed with the tax department on each reappraised POA lot. Here they are. These are all the ones that we own. We won 95% of the 62 appeals. It reduced the tax exposure by almost $333,000. We also began the legal argument that certain common properties which are not amenities are being used as potential profit centers and as such can help offset POA dues for its members should be tax exempt. That's another potential $1.9 million in tax exposure reduction. And oh, by the way, we've been paying taxes on all of this since 2016. As part of the fiduciary responsibility, each board member and our partners were tasked with presenting revenue concepts to infuse our non-due side of the equation. Each business plan was pressure tested on capital, ROI, startup, feasibility, sustainability, and success rate. Already rolled out revenue ideas? Art exchange at the point. Curbside pickup. Lunchbox program. Special events at the point. Palm trees. Mosquito program. Golf membership packages. Land development fee, which will go effective July 1st. Tennis pickleball lessons. International night. Top shelf spirits. 240 club. New merchandise with new logos. So we have handbags, hats, and tumblers. There are the point of sales at POA, the golf course, the restaurant, and consignment at RMG. They make great gifts, but for the 8,000 timeshare guests that visit us each year, they make even better souvenirs. This one, all dollars counts, but this one is a game changer. This is the first non-dues income to move the needle. We are partnering with a private company to build your own fiber network. Yes. It's what the future does in communities like our size. I always called it an utility. If you think about it, most homes can't function today without water, electricity, or the internet. This will be known as FHN, Fairfield Harbour Network. FHN means all network equipment on our campus. Our own dedicated 1-800 number for service. A seat at the table. Price control. Residuals for access. Before, these large conglomerates, they used to grab state line easement rights, even on private lands, which we have, all in the nature We're all in the name of service. No more. Fiber is a huge part of securing our community. Provisions for CCTV at key entry points and common areas. It enables RFID technology, monitoring systems, and total access control from a single location. This basic package includes internet speed of 300 megabytes per second. It's true symmetry. To go home and do a speed test, see if you get equal amounts for both download and upload. No more throttling at peak times and inconsistent speeds. 70 cable stations on a dish network. Don't worry, you don't have to put a dish on your house. They'll be beamed into a central location. Unlimited calling. In the event of emergency, responders have your location. Any increase will be capped at 4% per year. This private network hasn't exercised this in a decade. Extras like ESPN, HBO, premium channels, all that other stuff are a la carte. All for the monthly price of $119.99, plus obviously taxes and government fees. The revenue projection on this partnership has a potential infusing to the top line on a conservative number of $250,000 annually. If the entire community gets on board and supports your own network, the number will be north of $600,000 annually. Okay? This is year after year after year. Shift happened. Before I turn this over to the financial director so you can see the dramatic changes in the numbers and how this performance strengthens the strategic director's exciting news, I want to personally thank this board. There were many long hours going through contracts, negotiations, and presentations. I know I push hard, but if you look back, this was all accomplished in just 1 year. If you would, please join me in a round of applause. This is our agenda. We've completed the first two. We will now go to the board and committee reports. Rich Miller, Vice President and Director of Finance.
Fairfield Harbour. Yeah. Thank you all for coming tonight. I was really glad that we have a nice turnout. I do want to recognize some guests tonight. Chip Hughes is here. He's the regional director for Troon. Brian's over there from the golf course. I would also like to say that the total staff for the POA office is here tonight. I am Rich Miller. I'm currently the Vice President and Director of Finance, at least for the next hour. Normally this session would be done through Terry, who was our treasurer until a few weeks ago. I want to thank him for about a year's worth of service. He's a full-time job at Bern Country Club. He's a full-time father, a full-time husband, full-time dog walker. He's a very busy guy, and between the two of us, we try to keep everything square. I attended the meeting a couple weeks ago about the candidates that are here tonight. Will be elected later on. And I walked away from that meeting with two observations. The first observation was, heard a lot of idealistic kind of comments, which is, it's a good thing. People should be feeling that way and enthusiastic about what they're about to do for the next 3 years. The second comment or walk away that I had was critical community constructive communication. How's that for literacy? I was going to use websites also, but I'm not too good at that, so I left that one out. What do I mean by that? You probably don't understand that. The second thing I heard was the community wants to know more about what is going on with the board. So tonight, we're going to present some stuff financially to you. Maybe not. I don't want to put you to sleep with numbers, but like Bill said earlier, you don't know where you appreciate what you got now until you know where you came from. So we're going to do a comparison between 2016 and 2022, our last fiscal year. And FY, we chartered this not the normal FY. FY is a accounting acronym for fiscal year. So FY 22, our fiscal year starts in March 1st, went through the end of February of 23. So we just finished our fiscal year a few months ago, and we got the results for that now, and I'd like to share that with you. If you look back at 2016, Bill's already gone over some of the key points there. We actually, for revenue, since I didn't want to show you a bunch of numbers, we're just going to show you one. But what does that one number mean? When it says revenue is the summation of all the collected dues income, all the collected non-dues income, minus cost of goods sold. So, we ended up $32,000 over plan for revenue. That's good. The other thing is collections. This is just the dues collections. We ended up at 102% of the budget. Second year in a row we've done that. So we're doing good. This is bad debt, otherwise known as the allocation of doubtful accounts. There's three pieces that go into this. There's the accounts receivable over 90 days old for the POA and for the dog. And that's collected at 80%. And then the third piece is 50% of the POA owned box, the value of that. So that gets summed up. And if you go back and look at where we were in 2016 versus where we were this last fiscal year, I mean, that's a $250,000 difference. That's really good. And we'll get down to that a bit later. I'll show you something else. EBITDA. This is an earning before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. And basically what that is Lawrence, they could set up this trailer, and you would come out, and that would be your pro shop. And we didn't have a snack bar then that much. But then when COVID hit, they allowed each individual person to come play around the golf in their own golf cart. So social distancing with golf carts. So pretty cool. We talked about POA on the blocks. Back in 2016, we had 189 POA on the blocks. Those are pieces of property that we get through the process. So what happens when you get a POA on the block? You lose your revenue. You can't collect dues on what you already own. You have to pay property tax. You also got to pay a water service fee. And it's used as the basis of bad debt. That I explained earlier. In 2022, we had 62 POA on the blocks. Reduction of lot. And a lot of hard work there. We've been selling lots that have been on the market for decades, like Davy Jones. We sold some lots down at Davy Jones Court. We've also, in April this year, we sold 3 lots at Lighthouse Lane. So we're really down to 59 right now. That kind of momentum, you can see it on the bottom right here, is that home values have gone up. We've got like 56 to 60 new homes being built right now in the harbor. It's phenomenal. Off the path the other night, I think our future still looks good on that right now. I'm going to use other data. This is for FY22 only. Many of you may not know that we hire an outside vendor or independent accounting audit company every year. It's called Bern Company. They specialize in HOAs and POAs, and just so you guys have a comfort feel that we are doing our business correctly, and we are, because we got a report back from Ernie. They have found no accounting issues, and we got black pens. Get red pen is bad. So we finished FY22 in a very strong financial position. On the balance sheet, we have all these different bank accounts, and part of the reason why we do that is to take advantage of the FDIC insurance. We're only allowed $250K per bank, per entity. So you may have 3 or 4 bank accounts, but you're only going to get covered $250K. So to kind of spread the wealth around a little bit, we got multiple bank accounts. So one of the operating balance is made up of about 3 or 4 different bank accounts. And we ended the year with a balance at the end of February of $328K. Now it may seem like it's a lot of money, but it's really only maybe 2 to 4 weeks worth of bill pay and labor pay. They talk about labor pay. We now have 56 employees that we're responsible for. This is their livelihood. So we want to make sure that we have money in the bank that will pay them all the time. There's also reserve account balance. Reserves are prepaid maintenance for assets that we own. We had a balance at the end of the year there at $564K, which is good because about a month later we had to pay $170 for roads and streets. So just a little chunk of change. $170. But that was planned, so don't worry about it. That's okay. As we stated earlier, total revenue exceeded the budget by 33K. Overall expenses, slightly over budget, about 115K. There we go. Net EBITDA, minus 82K. Here's the only bad news I'm going to give you tonight. We're still working on, revenue's not the problem. And so making our loan payment is not the problem. We're making revenue through it all and the point. But we're still trying to get them to be totally self-sufficient. We're not quite there yet. We know the problem. We're working on it. We're working it through. And we're working on as much ideas as we can to drive that number down, and the trend over time is really good. And since we put an effort on it, we're hoping that that'll start making a profit within a year or two. So net income exceeded budget over 313K. Increased revenue in all segments. POA increased 348K, and the golf and point increased revenue 147K from the previous year. We've had increased collections of dues and fees. And we've gone over the POA costs. The only update there is, like, if you're familiar with the peninsula on John Lear, if you go down Pelican and you get to the four-way stop and you turn left and then you start going around that corner on the land side, not the water side, but there's like 17 to 20 lots that I think somebody can make some money off of. Sometimes we have to put in about 6 feet of dirt, pillars, and 2-story house to get water to it. So maybe in a few years they'll start, we'll be able to, right now, maybe we can get something going there. I would like to get a big hand to the property committee, working hard. We have cleaned up a lot of old, pardon my French, crap. There were some homes that just had some unique situations that just needed a strong push, and we did that. So I think that's about all I got. I got one more question. Is anybody hot? Okay, John, hit it.
Hey, you still with us? There's a lot of information today to absorb, so please bear with me. I am the last presenter, and will only take 5 minutes of your time with a few pictures. My role on this board is liaison to the Harbor Club and the Director of Strategic Planning. The last strategic plan was from 2017, and in that plan was to rebuild a new community center. That was 6 years ago. It was in the planning stages in 2017, and I was chairman of the committee back then. We submitted our recommendations to the board in June of 2018. Nothing was advanced on the community center for 4 years. In June 2021, Bill Hewitt and I were elected to the board, and we and others on the board then funded the initial process of a new community center. Okay. How many here remember this? Raise your hands, the anchor pool. Well, that's about a third. That's pretty good. Anyway, okay, if you look on this picture, you'll see the anchor pool with the shoreline clubhouse directly behind it. That's the building that was right behind it. You can see the water views, etc. Boats that are still there. This is called the shoreline clubhouse. And if you see this location, most real estate people call this location the jewel of the harbor for a good reason. Okay, this view here with the red lines shows the different angles of the vast water views from this prime location. The new community center, now being referred to as the Harbor Club, will be rebuilt at the same location. Over the last 2 years, we've researched and interviewed many architectural firms and recently hired Dunn & Dalton for this project. The next two slides will show their preliminary overview, which is the master plan, and the second one is the potential floor plan. Now, this was drafted from the request that we had for our community is 2,500 lots. There's approximately 2,000 homes already built, but this community center is going to be capable, if we ever get to full fruition of 2,500 lots, that the size of the rooms and things that are there should be able to accommodate. Okay, so this is the master plan. The thing on the left, which is, sorry, it is behind me, but you'll see if you went to the Alec Williams or any of the music, we've been putting music on the hill and using a little amphitheater to go up the hill to track the sound. You know, the actually has been fun for some of the folks over to me here. But the sound will go this way, and you have the ocean view behind you with the sunset for any of those music or any other events that are going to be there. Thank you, sorry. All right. The next one is the master site plan. No, the next one is the floor plan. Okay, this shows the POA offices on the left, a bunch of different meeting rooms, some storage, the big community room. If you've seen Carolina Colors, something similar to that. It fits about a little under 300 people. That's pretty much my presentation. I'm looking forward to the new Harbor Club. Hope you all are too. Thank you very much. Back to Phil on the election. All right.
All right, before we go to the announcement of the new directors, we must thank two directors that served their full 3-year term faithfully. Craig Myler, who I thank for being such an avid reader like myself. He too read every document of our creation on front steps and understood how 47F worked. Craig knew the legal requirements of the position and made sure we adhered to all our governing documents. He was my go-to person if I needed a subject researched or needed clarification on any matter. You were a great thinker, and when I was looking for objectivity, you were a perfect sounding board. Thank you for always listening to new ideas, either expounding on them or finding a solution to obstacles. Both you and your analytical mind will be missed. Rich Miller, thank you for your years of service to this community, not only as a director, vice president, but also your years as treasurer. What I really liked was you were never closed-minded or rigid, that you appreciated my out-of-the-box thinking, but you always went back to your gift with the county and made sure that they were financially sound. Thank you for being mindful of the little details and always having a pulse on the bigger picture. Your specific skill set in financial history will be difficult to replace. My hope is that I can call on you again, and together we can find the perfect person for treasurer. I thank you both, and this community thanks you for your commitment and volunteerism. These two directors acted and became part of the solution. They didn't sit back and throw daggers, but actually rolled up their sleeves and made a difference. Let's give them a big round of applause for their service. As you see in your agenda, we've knocked off a third item. Next is the announcement of new board members and installation of new board members as well. I will turn this over to Hope Carmichael, partner at Jordan Price and our legal counsel.
Can you hear me? I'm pretty loud. Good evening. I am standing in tonight for Tom Monty, who is a local CPA with the firm of Carr, Riggs & Ingram. That firm was contracted to receive and tally the ballots that you cast in the election of directors. As you know, there were 5 candidates running for election, and no one has these results have not been shared with anyone on the board of directors or your management or any of your members until I'm announcing them tonight. So I have kept them confidential since being provided with them by your CPA. You did, the CPA firm did certify to the POA that the number of ballots received met the quorum requirements, and therefore I certify that the election was a valid election. Congratulations to your 3 new directors receiving the highest number of votes: Robert Broody, Tina McLeod, and David Pfeffercorn.
Rhonda, our secretary, will swear in the new candidates. I should say new directors.
Please stand and repeat after me, please. I state your name. Do solemnly agree to abide by the declarations of restrictions and the bylaws of Fairfield Harbour, and to abide by the restrictions that apply to the POA Board of Directors. I further agree to exercise my obligations and fiduciary responsibilities congratulations.
Congratulations to the new directors and to the others who are willing to throw their hat into the ring. Before we go to the Q&A, Rich has some parting words, and I will also hand the mic to Craig if he has any parting words as well, or words of wisdom to the new directors.
It's been a great ride being a director. I've been on multiple boards, and each one of them were different, but this one was really, like Phil said, quite a challenge for the year. I'm glad it's over. Just to let you know what's going to happen later on tonight, in about a half hour after I get home, my IQ is going to go up about 100 points. And I'm going to be the sanest person in the harbor. I can't say the same for you 3. The condition is kind of the opposite, but don't worry about it. It's only a 3-year deal.
I was worried that would be something hard to follow with wisdom, but the IQ part was good. I learned a lot in the last 3 years. There were a lot of tough times. There were a lot of great times. The biggest thing is getting to know a lot of people and getting to know a lot about this community. And if there's anything that's wisdom that comes out of this mouth, I hope it's that people recognize that we are a community, We're going to have some squabbles, we're going to have some good times, we're going to hold hands, we're going to point fingers, all those things are going to occur. But in the end, if we don't make this our best life we can, we're making a mistake. Thank you all.
I want to also recognize the committee members who also volunteer to make this community better. If you are part of any committee, please stand up and remain standing until all committees are recognized. Adjudicatory panel, The Beacon, Broad Creek Road Gang, Christmas Parade, Covenant Enforcement, Enhancement, Events, Harbor Club, Golf Advisory Panel, Library, Property Control, Roads and Streets, Safety and Security, Stormwater, Traffic Adjudication Panel, Waterfront, and Wildlife. Thank you. Thank you all. Okay. We're going to move into the Q&A. Before we do, we have some ground rules. If you have a question, I'm going to ask you to leave your seat and move into the middle aisle behind the tape X on the floor and begin to form a line. Someone will help you with a microphone, and please do not take it from them. Prior to asking your question, state your name, your address, and how long you've been a homeowner. Once you ask your questions, please return to your seat, or if you have another question, please go to the back of the line so everyone has a chance. While the line is forming, I'm going to start off. My first question is to legal counsel. I'm going to help, hopefully you can help us set the stage. I have 3 in total. The first one has 3 parts, as you always know from me. I asked you the first day when I met you, but hopefully you can clarify this for us, can you tell us how many, I guess, HOAs and POAs that your firm represents?
We, at this point, I've been doing this for about 32 years. I solely focus in the representation of homeowners associations, condominiums, property owners associations. Our firm collectively represents somewhere north of 2,800 property owners associations and HOAs across North Carolina, from the mountains to the coast.
Great. I think that makes you an expert in the room. But anyways, second, our HOA or our POA, Fairfield Harbour, based on that knowledge, are we considered a large, middle of the road, or a small community?
Fairfield Harbour, and I've been representing Fairfield Harbour since 2012, so thank you for having me back, and I enjoy seeing many of you here tonight. You are in the top 2% in terms of size of property owners associations in North Carolina. Of the clients we represent, off the top of my head, I can only name about 7 who are 2,500, or I would say even 2,200 lots or above. You get a lawyer talking, Phil, I'm going to keep talking. Did that answer your question?
That did answer your question. So, I was talking to my directors over here. The other one is, based on our size, our dues, are they considered high, middle of the road, low, or one of the lowest?
You're absolutely at the bottom in terms of lowest, I can tell you that. And let me remind me, are you at 16? Tell me what the dues are right now.
Under 1,200.
Oh, yeah. So, see, I didn't even remember it, and I'm the one that's responsible for collecting all the delinquent accounts. But, yeah, I just can't even, by a third, you're probably the lowest compared to those 7 that I can name off the top of my head.
Okay, thank you. The next one surrounds the doors. And if you can explain what doors are in simple layman terms, tell the audience the steps to change them, describe the obstacles and the percentages of it occurring, and along with how 47F plays a part in all this.
Okay, and by doors, Bill, is, that's an acronym for Declaration of Restrictions. I'll make it a little more complicated. In Fairfield Harbour, you have two kind of governing systems. The Declaration of Restrictions, which are sections 1 through 7, and the Master Declaration, which applies to the later developed phases of Fairfield Harbour. Under either set of documents, and you've got to amend both if you want to change any of the recorded restrictions. Just at a very high level, the Declaration of Restrictions or Master Declaration are the rules governing what land use, what you can do on your lots. It also governs the mandatory obligations that you have to the POA, such as payment of assessments. It also governs what the POA mandatorily has to do for you. Maintain all of the common areas, maintain the roads and streets, the stormwater infrastructure, the amenities, etc., etc. So if you wanted to make changes to those land use restrictions, they are recorded in the Craven County Register of Deeds in the land records. When you buy your lot, they are already subject to the lot and they are attached to your title. So therefore, it's a very serious matter to change them, because everyone who buys a lot has, in theory, the ability to read those before you purchase your property, so you know what you're getting yourself into. A change requires an absolute 2/3, 67% vote of all lot owners, whether it's the DORs, sections 1 through 7, 67% of those lot owners, or the Master Declaration, 67% of those. So logistically, you already have a problem. If you want to enact a rule change that applies to the entire community, you've got to have 2 votes and achieve that threshold twice. So that's one obstacle. The other obstacle is just apathy and the logistics of getting 2/3 of my count on the lots was 2812 at one point. I heard 2,500, but I've done a little litigation for your community, and that number 2812 sticks in my mind for a long time. So that's a big threshold to get 2/3 of the people to agree that the sky is blue, much less change a rule that everybody is going to agree to abide by. The bylaws, I'm not sure, Phil, if this was in your question, but the bylaws are able to be changed by the board of directors, and they are the rules by which the corporation is governed. And I appreciate Phil introducing the corporation and the directors, because you are an incorporated entity, the POA is. And so don't get confused between the bylaws which govern your election, for example, quorum, budget constraints, how your minutes are kept, the duties of the officers, etc., with the land use restrictions that are recorded in the Register of Deeds. That's what takes that supermajority threshold to pass change. Is that what you?
Yes.
Will add?
So I'm going to simplify it. Does it take basically the moon, the stars, and the universe to align to be able to get this done?
I would not disagree. How about that?
Fair enough. Lastly, could you remind, I know you've done this will be the 4th time, but just for clarity, remind the membership what is required to rebuild an amendment.
So, I have answered this question, I think, at every annual meeting for the last 3 or 4 years. Because you already, the POA already owns property, and you are restoring or improving property you already own, it can be done without a vote of the membership. Now, many of you remember a legal decision. The plaintiff in that lawsuit was Mr. Drez, so many people refer to that as the Drez decision, if you've ever heard that lawsuit mentioned. The result of that lawsuit was that the POA could not go out and purchase new property, purchase new real estate, i.e. the 385 acres of the golf course, without using dues income, okay? And if we went through the purchase of the 385 acres, just to reinforce the history Phil gave you, by structuring the budget so that the repayment of the loan was using non-dues income, and that was how that purchase was achieved. The rebuilding of an amenity has nothing to do with the DRES decision because you already own the real property. You're improving the real property that you already own. It's clear in your covenants that the dues are allowed to be used for that purpose. Now, what restriction do you have, or does the board have? And that's in the bylaws, which I mentioned to you, the bylaws. And that's that the membership is required to vote on any capital expenditure which exceeds 15% of projected revenues for any fiscal year. Now, as I have sat in your annual meeting for the last 3 or 4 years, I have seen that you have these budgets projected out, with revenues projected out. We saw some new revenues that now I think are folded into your projected budget. And it's my understanding, and you certainly need to examine the financials for yourself, but as I have seen those projections, that does not run afoul of that provision in the bylaws, and you're well within those limits for the board to make this decision without a membership vote. So when you hear that, that is the legal basis for that answer. And I know it's confusing, but I hope that gives everybody some information that maybe you were missing.
Thank you.
Kathleen?
We will now take questions. If you can come up to the X. Again, remember, we'd like you to state your name, your address, and how long you've been a homeowner.
Oh, you gotta hold it, so. Greg McCauley, currently on 6118 Cardinal Drive. We lived here prior on 1305 Barkentine for almost 10 years. We've been back now for about a year and a half. So, say 1.5 years. My question is, nobody's lined up behind. I have 2 questions. One, my understanding was enforcement of speed within the community was a problem. I don't know if you'd like to explain to the community how they can do that now, where in the past, even though the security had radar guns, they were never able to enforce the speed limit. And you don't have to answer it right now, but just a question. The second is, I understand the vision, thank you for explaining it about rebuilding the clubhouse. The concern is, as everybody knows who's ever built a house, we just recently did, cost of materials go up, things vary, so even though it may be within that cost range now, what restrictions shut it down if it exceeds that? We know change orders, we know a lot of things happen within construction, so a project, any project, government projects that are, say, $10 million projects go to $20, $30 million projects and get way out of control. The other is, what?
Okay, we're gonna stop. That's 3 questions, so let's deal with the one first, and then you can come back if you have another. So the first one I'm gonna give to Hope about the legal requirements because we are private roads. Can we enforce speed limits here?
So I'm not sure what the prior obstacles were, but with a security person with a radar gun, you don't have the ability to give tickets on the spot and to, it's the security force. The enforcement of the speed is via a finding system with evidence presented to your adjudicatory panel, and it's the purchase of the board's kind of initiative, I guess, to purchase the speed cameras that record that data and have an actual recorded number that's tied to the vehicle so that the proof to go before the adjudicatory panel and levy the fine is what's allowed under 47F. And I'm just remembering that Bill asked me, 47F is the North Carolina Planned Community Act, which does have some statutory framework that overlays how POAs can enforce their restrictions.
I probably won't need it loud as it is. My name's Vito Stallone. I moved into Fairfield Harbour a little over a year ago. I live on Cara Drive. It's probably one of the busiest streets we have in the complex now, so the speed limit reduction is gonna help. I have one question, I have one topic, but I have several questions regarding the topic. This Fairfield Harbor network, great idea. I've been part of a few communities that had their own setups where you could purchase cable, internet, telephone. I think we're going about it the wrong way. If we're trying to bring in our own network and we're only going to get 300 megabytes of speed with equal continuity on the upload and download, if it's fiber, we should be getting a gigabyte.
Okay, so I'm gonna stop you there. That's the basic package. So if you want gigabytes, you want speed, you can have it, okay? So you're gonna pay for it, just like you do with anybody else. But the basic package is where we start. So you will deal with them separately, meaning the company, and you pick whatever you want. So if you want, so most packages only start at 100. This package starts at 300. So if you want a gigabyte, you can pay all day long for a gigabyte. You're gonna find, for most people in this community, 300 speed is more than what they're getting right now if they do their run rate.
Oh, okay. Forget it, I'll submit them.
Hello, I'm Morgan Taggart. We've been owners for 2 years, but we've been part of this community for almost 10 years now. And we are the 2328 Fairfield Drive. My question to the board is I am all about the new clubhouse for the future, but what about the structures in our neighborhood right now that are falling apart? Like the old park barn. It doesn't look good, you know, there's things, I don't think that would be that big of a budget to fix it. A lot of people use it. This year, my Easter egg hunt got postponed, and I coincided with the events committee to try to get the families over to use it, and I noted that the old park barn, and to be honest, I was embarrassed. The sides, it's falling apart, but, you know, all the weeds and stuff, I just don't think it would take very much at all to make that look prettier. And a lot of people love to go there, so are there any plans to fix things like that?
So if you saw the actual master site plan, it's part of it. So instead of fixing it now and then having to reevaluate it later, it is part of this master site plan.
That could be involved with.
Yes, so you saw a pool on there, you saw an amphitheater on there, there was additional parking, the boat launch is in there, you also have the new clubhouse as well.
Is there anything we could do to make it up a little bit until then? You know, like just like the end caps and stuff, where it's full of weeds and, flowers or something, at least make it look a little more attractive.
That would be something that we would give to Will. If it's weeds and grass, to be able to mow it and stuff like that. But it doesn't make sense to put money into it right now when we're in the process of bidding all that out.
Okay. My name is Wayne Massetti. I'm at 906 Jewel Court. I've been a resident for 23 years. Just a quick question. I'm highly in favor of our new harbor club. Just for logistics and peace of mind, I don't hear anybody else asking me yet, but what is the protocol or what is the logistics set up for knowing when we will know what the cost will be for putting this in? When will it be developed? When will it be finished? Can you give us any background on this at all? Because right now, I gather 99% of these people are in the fog.
Okay, regarding the Harbor Club, we have put into the budget over the next 5 years adequate money to start the procedure. Like I said, we've already hired the architect. He's going to be working this year. That budget has already been set aside. Next year, there's another set of budget depending on what he gets accomplished and what the plan is now versus then. We put a lot of thought and change into this, and we had a committee that's been on this for a few years. We spoke to the board, a lot of the people on the board put this in. So this is planned over the next 5 years that the dues will remain constant regarding this. We're not talking about inflation. If there's an 8% inflation, and we have to raise for inflation, that's different. But there will be no raising of the dues aspect for the new Harbor Club. That's already planned out. When the 385 loan gets paid off, this will take off. So it's a straight line structure, and there's no additional cost at this point in time.
Hey Wayne, I think I can answer that. I think what you were looking for is, when will I get more information on this? So we just hired an architect a month ago, and we asked him, can you get something for our annual meeting? He actually gave us 5 options that we came up with to come here. We selected what we thought was the best option. So anytime we're developing a site or building a home, there's changes, and this is a preliminary. As the changes come and as we have more information, John will either have what I call a town hall meeting, or we'll actually be able to provide that information. The concept is, as we get schematics and 3D elevations, that we will be able to have those available for all the community at the POA Center. So if you want to come in, check out the plans, look at the sites, see what's going on, it will all be available.
One last thing on that, which I forgot to mention earlier, is that, number one, I hope all you folks read the weekly updates and read the monthly beacon, which can do a little more in-depth. But I will, as this architect goes forward, I will give quarterly updates through the weekly update with Jennifer, or through the beacon with Gail, and give more in-depth on what's going on. But now that we finally hired the architect, you'll get quarterly updates on the progress.
So Wayne, I'm going to ask yours and possibly the gentleman behind you about costs. In order to figure out what costs are, you have to have an architect to be able to design it. And then you have to go out to bid. And once we go out to bid, we'll actually have a better idea where our numbers are. But before we actually began, we gave them a number and said, hey, based on your experience, based on this size, based on the architecture that we're looking at, can we fall within the range? And they felt very comfortable, both the landscape architect and the architect, and obviously, we're going to actually bid this out, so there'll be 3 contractors bidding it.
This is just a comment, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to monopolize. I appreciate it, and you guys are doing a hell of a job, so I do appreciate everything you're doing. I myself, in business, I've had 3 businesses, so I know where you're coming from, so I'm not a dummy coming off the street asking some questions, but I appreciate everything you're doing. Thank you.
Still 6118 Fairfield Drive. Still love to have here. Just a counterpart to Wayne's question. I would love to see the board let us know, this is going to be amenity. What is planned to make this a profitable amenity? Just like our golf club, our restaurant, our boat docks, everything within the community that's an amenity is there to try to make a profit, as you mentioned for your financial statement. That would be nice if the community could hear what is planned, instead of just an expenditure and a cost to the community every year. What is planned to make money from this new venture?
So one of the things, and you'll see, is that we're actually moving the POA offices and all the activity buildings in one central location, trying to create an actual village in those 2 other buildings. That's $60,000 per year in rent. So maybe you might have a doctor in there, you might have a lawyer, you might have a dentist, you could have a daycare. To have that ability in your backyard is a wonderful asset. But as far as expansion, that cost alone, that $60,000 will cover more than the operating cost. I just showed you a revenue plan that brings in $600,000. Rich just showed you what we're actually doing with our 2 business centers, and those are becoming profitable. It doesn't necessarily need to make money.
Hi, I'm Susan Nimick, 3117 Cara Drive. We all know that because it's probably right there. I think the speed limit on Cara Drive should be 25. I think that the people who have cut me off, almost hit me, ran my dogs over, numerous times in the last 2 years, do not stop at that stop sign and help me ever. And it's like the on-ramp from 17 freeway. They speed, they actually take over complains of each other, going around the corner. My golf cart, I had to pull off the road because people are going around me, and then people head on coming the other way.
Okay, so you just made a statement and not asked a question. So, is there a question with that?
Are you doing anything about it? Because I can feel helpless. At least 5 different times asking you to do something about it.
Kathy,
I have been to the jail at least 5 or more times to say, why aren't you doing anything? Why don't you put the speed control sign down where it's more important on Pelican to cross Castleberry? Other than.
so one of the things that you can do, as you saw, is join the Safety and Security Committee. Because the Safety and Security Committee brings their ideas to the board, and then the board as a corporation makes a decision on it.
Right, but why hasn't anybody done anything about it? We all know that none of that stuff's on the street.
Okay, I just, the best way to do it is bring it to the Safety and Security Committee or become part of that. To make a change, be part of the solution.
Marty Jones, 7302 Windward, almost 5 years. My question is, I've heard talk and there was voting on putting in a gate on Marina or in that vicinity. What is the status of that?
Well, we actually sent out a survey for that because it's part of inclusive looking at the fiber in our security and actually making this a truly gated community. So the survey came back and the results were overwhelming. 80% of the population in there wanted it. So what we'll do is now do a study on that to see what we do going forward. So there hasn't been any decision. All we did is put out a survey to see if the homeowners were open to having Marina Drive gated like the rest of the community.
Hi, my name is Paul Mills. I've been a resident here for about 17, 18 years, I guess. Seen a lot of change over the years. Then 809 Midway. Got a couple of clarifications I'd just like to make. Mentioned the buildings in disarray. Ms. Taggart mentioned a while ago the car barn. And you said that was part of the site plan with the Harbor Club coming about. What kind of timeline are we looking at, realistically? Because the deterioration of that building is only going to get worse without something being done to it. So how long is it going to stay in that disarray until that timeline comes about? Second, with the...
Let's answer the first.
You're looking for a ballpark figure of when we think we can start building the harbor club?
Just a general timeline, because the building's still just falling apart, per se.
Well,
So if we wait 5 years, that's a little too long to wait.
we just hired the architect a month ago. His study's gonna take a year, okay? And Irv Jaffe, who's here tonight, we closed on a refinance of the original Fairfield Harbour partner loan in January of last year. It's a 5-year loan. I don't really want to carry 2 loans at one time, but it doesn't mean we can't pay it off early. The current structure of that 5-year loan is a 3-2-1 repayment penalty. So March of 2075 would be the very earliest that we could do anything as far as breaking ground. I'm not saying that we're going to do it. Things slip. We gotta go through the hiring process. We gotta be able to make sure we have enough money to pay off the loan early. For example, year 5, I think it's about $340,000 that we have to pay off early. To get it from a 5-year loan to a 4-year loan. We could probably do that. The good news is, you don't have to pay the interest on that loan for that year that you're gonna pay it off early, and you're not gonna have a prepayment penalty. If you wanna bring it in another year early, it's another $350,000. So, do we have that kind of money? I don't know yet. we're gonna have to go for another round.
I just wanted to add something to that, because as a board member, I don't feel that we have to have a multi-million-dollar building approved to get any kind of safety issues addressed if something's actually falling apart. That's not even in that realm financially. I think what you should do is call Jennifer at the office, set up a hearing where you can come in and talk to the POA one-on-one with some suggestions on what could be done to improve that, and I promise you, they will look at it, and if it's anything reasonable, I think most people on the board will go right along with it, and it doesn't need, millions of dollars to fix the cart barn, not to rebuild it and make something spectacular out of it, but to make it safe and clean it up. So that'd be my suggestion to you, is just make an appointment and come in.
That's a better answer. Thank you. That's what we were trying to say, is not that it needs to be all improved, it just needs to be safe and fixed a little bit. Thank you, that was great.
Hi, my name is Kelly Lynn, I live at 915 Nassau Court. Can't hear me? Is that better? Okay. So my question is for Mr. Miller. When you were doing your presentation, you referred to a $564,000 reserve. There was a study that is on the POA website that talks about a percentage of reserve based on the annual expenses of a community that we should be at, Fairfield Harbour should be, and we're falling quite short of that. So with all of these new things that we're doing to raise money, are some of those funds going to go into that reserve that was recommended by that study? So we're set up for another Florence or another emergency?
Reserve studies and I don't get along very well. If you think about what a reserve study has done, you get an engineer that comes in from out of state and spends 2 days here on site and puts together a plan that he says we need to follow. Reality kind of sets in. Like, for example, we had no budget for the repair of the Inner Harbor, but because the Inner Harbor, the bulkheads are deteriorating, we need to address that issue now. So we do have, I don't know if you looked at the budget, we spend about $750,000 to $900,000 a year in maintenance of our assets. The Inner Harbor is going to take $1 million to fix. So we can't do it all at one time. It's going to be a multi-year plan that has to be put together. If you want us to raise the dues to get that percentage, then you're going to have to bring your request up to the board.
Yeah, Rich and I didn't always agree on the study, except in one thing, it's just that it's a study. What the board had asked for about 5 years ago when that study was prepared was a 100% funded reserve. And what that means is at the end of a period of time, you'll have enough money in the bank to do every single maintenance item in the harbor. That came out to between $10 and $30 million. We said we want to take a different approach to how we look at reserves. We want to make sure that we're planning for the reserve, that we're covering the needed repairs that we anticipate, that we have some contingency for those that we don't. And in the end, we want to make sure that we have at least $200,000 in the bank as a what if something really bad happens that we have to pull that out. And so if you look at how the reserve's been structured, we use the study to guide us, but we're not looking to put $10 to $30 million in the bank. We're looking to have enough in the bank to cover what the needs are each year.
Good evening. I am Greg Harold. I am at 705 Wind Way. My wife Teresa and I moved in a lot 4 weeks ago.
Congratulations.
Thank you. We were at a meeting a couple weeks ago and heard something about buying property up by the gas station and putting up a sign, and I was wondering what was going on with that, since that would help with revenue streams from the golf and
Can you repeat the last part, please?
Sure. So I had heard that there was going to be a sign put up on the property across from the gas station up on 55 to attract people for the public golf, public food down here. So what's our timeline on that?
Our timeline is actually, it's been out to quote. I think there's 4 people looking at it currently right now, so we're waiting for the bids to come back.
Patrick Maloney, I'm on Tartan. And my question is a high-level financial view. I know from when you say the revenues, you said how much was for the POA and how much revenue was for the, from the golf operation. And I'm wondering, who are those 2 entities that you're talking about? What happens to, that was revenue you spoke of, what happens to the profits for those 2 entities?
What do you mean by the profits? If we're profitable?
Either way.
So if you're profitable, those are dollars that can be used in the community for something else. So like what Rich was saying, hey, those dollars now, we have extra dollars to put into the waterfront or wherever we want. Instead of paying out that $700,000 a year, that $700,000 if we get positive means we have that amount of money. Instead of writing a check to somebody else, we can write a check to ourselves.
The POA, that would be, when you say
I didn't understand that.
revenue from the
So you have 2 types of revenues that come in. You have non-dues and dues revenue. So you're confusing the 2. So you have dues that come in, which are dues, and then you have non-dues, which is revenue from the golf course and our restaurant. Those are 2 different dues, or 2 different revenues. Excuse me.
Right. What you had described earlier, you mentioned this revenue, and you mentioned so much from the POA and so much from the golf course. Yeah, I'm sorry.
If you want to break down, the budget is online, you can go online and look at it. But basically, dues income for 2022 revenue was about $3 million. Non-dues was $1.3 million. Now, to kind of do a little history on non-dues, before we purchased the amenities, non-dues income was about $150K. So we've taken a lot of steps to grow the non-dues through the golf, through the point, and that non-dues revenue pays for the loan and then some.
Let me, Phil, if I might, just clarify this. The POA owns the golf course and collects dues. So all of those operations are part of your nonprofit corporation. It's just 2 different revenue sources. Dues paid by members and income from operations of the golf course or other non-dues sources. If there ever were a profit, you would offset that by increasing your expenses to invest more in the community. You'd still be a nonprofit entity. Or, in the perfect world, non-dues income would be so high that you could lower the dues. So it could go either way. If you ever actually made a profit, it's permissible for a nonprofit corporation to make a profit. You would just pay income tax on it.
Hello, I'm Celeste McAllister. I live at Westlands and Riverwatch condos. You mentioned possibly developing a village with different ideas. I know that's not set yet, but would the board have permission to make those kinds of actions, create commercial space without coming back to the community?
Looking at me, yes, the board would have the ultimate decision in how it operates any of the POA-owned facilities. The restriction is on making a capital expenditure that exceeds 15% of projected revenue. So if an operations decision, which actually brings in revenue, would be wholly within the purview of the board.
All right. Well, let me just put forth my thoughts. I like this community as a residential community. I don't want to create a village. I don't want to create a town. I don't want to create a city. I live 6 miles down the road on purpose.
So, what we said about a town or a corporation.
No,
You
I'm
have
not
two
saying
buildings
you did.
here that could probably house a couple businesses. And I think a lot of people would like to be able to have some of those services in their own backyard.
Hi, I'm Dell Curry, and I live on Data Lane. I've been here 24 years. You said that there was a vote on whether to put a gate going into the Hamptons area.
No, there was no vote. We sent out a survey.
Oh, a
And
survey. You said, that's right, survey, and you said 80% wanted the gate?
Yes, that's what
Was
came
that
back.
80% of everybody in Fairfield, or 80?
No, only 8. So what we did is we sent it out to just that section of the community, not to the whole community. So if you lived off of Marina Drive, you got a survey, and the survey results were at 80% that wanted that gate.
I don't know anybody who lives there who wants it, that's why I was surprised. Thank you.
Paul Mills, and this is my follow-up from earlier. Just one more point on the Harbor Club we're talking about. Is there any plans for any type of special assessments due for the payment for that? Or is that supposed to come under our regular dues as far as an amenity, or as the residents here to be able to use?
Okay.
Clarification.
So special assessments, we're not gonna do any special assessments. We wouldn't do that for a capital improvement. Rich has already lined it out. He's shown it for the last 2 years that it's actually being paid with our current due structure. There should be no added increase. If you look at it, I think there's projected one more $50 increase on his 5-year plan to be able to get there. But there is, I can't promise anything in the future, but I can tell you right now, there is no consideration for that.
Just to be fair, I did not do the budget last year. That was Dan Argentary. However, I was going to make a point now, I forgot what it was. We have enough non-dues income to pay for the loan currently, and probably enough non-dues income to pay for the new loan for the Harbor Club, if we need that. However, once we pay off the current loan, we're not restricted to use dues versus non-dues to build the building. That goes away. But we own the property, we pay for the property, and therefore the Wainwright decision, although it's still active, wouldn't apply to building an enhancement to a property, improvement to a property. So we could use dues, we could use non-dues. It's our option.
Morgan Taggart again, Kara. Okay, so everybody's mentioning these gates. As opposed to having all these different gates in the neighborhood, wouldn't it make more sense to put one gate at Rocky Creek? We would save more money during the guard.
You are absolutely right. No, it's a public road. So we looked at that. That was a brilliant idea because it would make sense to have one gate and be able to control it. But the problem is we have people that live beyond our community and we can't stop that on a state road. But good thought though. I like it.
March Shepard, 7302 Windward. I was just curious about the timeline on the Sheriff's Department substation when it would come on campus.
We've already got the signs up. So Major McFadden, when is the substation coming? Just in case. So July 1. How's that? Thank you. Oh, where is it? It will actually be housed in the POA office. So there's a new sign up, and if you actually look at the door, the signage has already gone up at the door, on the door as well. Do we have any more questions? Kate?
Just a quick question on the location of the POA. Oh, I'm sorry, Kate Castle, 6004 Target Court. On the location of the POA building, my only concern is, since I live right down that way, we're inviting people that don't live here to come into the community to try to find the POA office to get information about the community. And so we're going to have strangers driving around trying to find the office. I'm just wondering what the thought process was to have the office inside the community as opposed to maybe being right here when this building is being used.
So Kate, so one of the reasons we were looking at is, one is to look at revenue that we can come from the village, but also if we have the POA office located at the Harbor Club, we actually have staff on site to watch that building 90% of the time. The other factor is that if you listen to what's happening with the gate and security, you're going to have to say, hey, I would like to go in to be able to see the POA, and we have those controls at the front. Hopefully that answered your question.
Yes, thank you.
Well, of course,
I want to say you guys done a great job.
thank you, Brad. Thank you for everybody coming out tonight and braving this heat. We are officially adjourned at 8:37. Do I have a vote from the board? Do I have a second? All in favor? It is adjourned at 8:37 p.m. Rhonda. All right. Hey, before you leave, you could help if you could grab your chair. We have stands that Will's going to be able to provide for us and we can hang up. Hey, Will, can you take the speakers down so we can use some